Number 8. The MV Sewol. Today we embark on a fascinating voyage into the depths of the ocean, where time stands still and history is preserved beneath the waves. In this video, we'll be diving deep to explore the awe-inspiring world of vessels that have been recovered from the seabed. From legendary warships that once ruled the high seas to opulent ocean liners that met tragic fates, the story behind these sunken ships are as diverse as they are fascinating. Join us on this incredible journey as we will unveil the remarkable tales of some of the most incredible vessels that were once lost to the depths but have now been reclaimed and brought back to the surface. And first on our list today is the story of the MV Sewol. The sinking and subsequent salvage of the MV Sewol is a tragic and harrowing chapter in South Korea's maritime history. On April 16, 2014, the ferry carrying 476 passengers and crew was en route from Incheon to Jeju Island. The journey was intended to be a routine voyage, but it would quickly turn into a devastating disaster. The MV Sewol encountered trouble when it made a sharp turn. The vessel was carrying an excessive amount of cargo, all of which was poorly secured and overloaded. This imbalance, combined with the abrupt maneuver, caused the ferry to capsize. Panic and confusion ensued as passengers and crew struggled to evacuate the sinking ship. Tragically, 304 people, mostly high school students on a field trip, lost their lives in this accident. The sinking of the MV Sewol shook South Korea and led to widespread outrage. Investigations revealed a series of critical failures, including lax safety regulations, inadequate training of the crew, and a lack of proper evacuation procedures. The tragedy sparked significant changes in South Korea's maritime safety regulations and led to a national conversation about accountability and safety standards. Efforts to salvage the MV Sewol were complicated by treacherous conditions in the waters off Jindo Island, where strong currents, frigid temperatures, and low visibility prevented formidable challenges. It took several years of planning and preparation before salvage operations could begin. But in March of 2017, a massive operation involving a semi-submersible ship and a team made up of divers and engineers commenced. The vessel then was carefully lifted from the seabed and was placed on a barge. Then, finally, the MV Sewol was transported to a dry dock in Mokpo, South Korea. Before we continue, if you're joining us for the first time, make sure you hit that subscribe button to unlock a treasure trove of incredible videos. And don't keep your thoughts to yourself. Drop a comment below and tell us what content you'd like to see next. Number 7. The Vasa. Commissioned by King Gustavus Adolphus of Sweden in the early 17th century, the Vasa was intended to be a symbol of Swedish naval power and a formidable warship. However, the ship's maiden voyage on August 10, 1628, would end in disaster. Shortly after setting sail from Stockholm Harbor, the Vasa, with all her cannons fully armed, heeled over and sank to the depths of the Baltic Sea. The exact cause of the sinking is still debated, but it's believed that design flaws combined with poor weight distribution contributed to her tragic demise. And unfortunately, the Vasa claimed the lives of at least 30 crew members. For over 3 centuries, the Vasa sat forgotten and preserved in the cold, brackish embrace of the Baltic Sea. But in 1956, a Swedish amateur archaeologist named Anders Franzen located the wreckage using old maps and historical accounts. The ship was remarkably well preserved thanks to the frigid waters of the Baltic Sea. The salvage operation that followed was an engineering marvel. A massive effort involving divers, cranes, and careful planning spanned a total of 4 years. Then in 1961, the Vasa was raised from the seabed, and its recovery marked a momentous achievement in marine archaeology. The ship, once lost to history, had finally been reclaimed from the depths. Today, the Vasa is a centerpiece of the Vasa Museum in Stockholm, where visitors can marvel at the remarkably preserved ship and its richly decorated interior. Number 6. The Mary Rose. Commissioned by King Henry VIII in 1510, the Mary Rose was a formidable warship, boasting a powerful array of cannons and serving as the pride of the Tudor fleet. On July 19, 1545, during the Battle of the Solent with the French fleet, fought just off the coast of Portsmouth, the Mary Rose suddenly keeled over and sank. According to a first-hand witness report, the ship fired at the French fleet and attempted to turn when an abrupt gust of wind forcefully toppled it onto its side, allowing seawater to flood the vessel through the cannon hatches, which had been left ajar. The loss of the Mary Rose was a tragic event, with around 500 crew members perishing. Then the ship stayed undiscovered beneath the waves for centuries, slowly becoming buried in silt and mud. In 1971, after years of research and planning, the ambitious salvage operation to recover the Mary Rose began. Divers, archaeologists, and engineers worked tirelessly to raise the vessel from the seabed. The painstaking process took several years, but in 1982, the Mary Rose was successfully lifted to the surface. The Mary Rose, along with a vast collection of artifacts, was carefully preserved and has become a time capsule of Tudor naval history. And today, the Mary Rose Museum in Portsmouth houses the ship and its artifacts, allowing visitors to step back in time and explore the lives of the sailors who served aboard this iconic vessel. At number 5, the USS Monitor. The sinking and subsequent salvage of the U.S. Monitor is a remarkable chapter in maritime history that unfolded during the American Civil War. Commissioned by the Union Navy in 1861, the USS Monitor was a pioneering ironclad warship, boasting a rotating turret that housed 2 powerful cannons. It was a symbol of innovation and represented a new era in naval warfare. But on March 9, 1862, the USS Monitor famously clashed with the Confederate ironclad CSS Virginia in the Battle of Hampton Roads, a historic encounter that marked the first time ironclad warships faced off against each other. The battle was inconclusive, but it changed naval warfare forever. Tragically, though, less than a year after the Battle of Hampton Roads on December 31, 1862, the USS Monitor encountered a fierce storm off the coast of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. The rough seas overwhelmed the warship, causing it to sink with the loss of 16 crew members. For over a century, the USS Monitor rested at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, largely forgotten but not lost to history. In 1973, the wreck was discovered by researchers, and a dedicated salvage effort was launched. Over the course of several years, divers and engineers carefully recovered the vessel's iconic revolving turret and other artifacts, including the anchor, propeller, and steam engine from the seabed. Today, many of the ship's artifacts are conserved and displayed at the USS Monitor Center in Newport News, Virginia, where they serve as a testament to the ship's legacy and the dedication of those who salvaged it from the depths of the sea. The remainder of the ironclad warship was transformed over the years from a weapon of war into an underwater haven for marine life. Then, in 1975, it was designated as the first national marine sanctuary, known as the Monitor National Marine Sanctuary. And today, as you descend into the depths of the site, you'll be greeted by a thriving ecosystem, teeming with life and a vibrant diversity of marine species that have made the USS Monitor their home. Number 4, the SS Great Britain. The SS Great Britain, a pioneering passenger ship of the 19th century, holds a unique place in maritime history for its revolutionary design and remarkable salvage and restoration efforts. Designed by the renowned engineer Isambard Kingdom Brunel and launched in 1843, the SS Great Britain was a trailblazer in naval architecture, featuring an iron hull and a screw propeller, a groundbreaking combination at the time. The ship's service was marked by several notable achievements. It was the first iron-hulled ocean-going passenger ship, and it set a new standard for safety and speed. The SS Great Britain served various roles over the years, from luxury passenger liner to transporting immigrants to Australia. However, changing times and technologies eventually led to its retirement in 1884. after which it was abandoned and partially sunk in the Falkland Islands. But the story of the SS Great Britain took a remarkable turn in 1970, when a dedicated salvage effort led by naval architect Ewan Corlett began to rescue the ship from its watery grave. The ambitious endeavor involved refloating the ship, towing it back to its place of birth in Bristol, England, and undertaking extensive restoration work. It was a great feat of engineering and perseverance, as the ship had to endure a treacherous journey across the Atlantic Ocean. Today, the SS Great Britain stands as a remarkable showcase of Victorian engineering and maritime ingenuity. Painstakingly restored to its original splendor, it now serves as a dynamic living museum. Here, visitors can immerse themselves in a bygone era, journeying through the ship's cabins, exploring the intricacies of its engine room, and discovering an array of historical artifacts. If given the chance, would you explore a sunken ship on a diving expedition? Let us know in the comments down below. And while you're at it, subscribe to the channel. Now, let's move on to number 3, the USS Hunley. Commissioned by the Confederate Navy during the American Civil War, the H.L. Hunley was a pioneering submarine, and its design represented a bold step forward in naval technology. It was intended for covert underwater missions against Union vessels, with a hand-cranked propulsion system that relied on human effort. The Hunley remarkably suffered not 1, but 3 sinkings. The first was during a test run in 1863, an accident that claimed the lives of 5 crew members. The vessel was then salvaged, and just a few months later it sank again, this time during a training exercise, resulting in the loss of all 8 crew members. Notably, one of the casualties was the submarine's inventor, Horace Lawson Hunley, even though he wasn't part of the Confederate military. And once more, the Hunley was raised and restored to operational status. But on the night of February 17, 1864, the Hunley embarked on its 3rd and last mission, one which proved to be fatal in Charleston Harbor. Its target was the USS Housatonic, a Union blockade ship. So in a daring maneuver, the Hunley approached the Housatonic and planted an explosive device on its hull, successfully sinking the enemy ship. However, shortly after this triumph, the Hunley itself mysteriously sank, taking its 8-man crew down with it. The vessel was located in 1995, more than a century after its last sinking. The subsequent salvage operation, carried out with great care and precision, culminated in the successful raising of the submarine in the year 2000. Now the H.L. Hunley is on display at the Warren Lash Conservation Center in North Charleston, South Carolina. The examination of the recovered artifacts from the Hunley suggested that it was in close proximity to the USS Housatonic when its deployed torpedo exploded, leading to its own demise. At number 2, the Seawise Giant. The Seawise Giant, originally known as the SS Knock Nevis, holds a prominent place in maritime history due to its extraordinary size, its sinking during the Iran-Iraq War, and its remarkable salvage. Built between 1974 and 1979, the Seawise Giant was the largest ship ever constructed, measuring a staggering 1,504 feet in length, with a deadweight tonnage of over 560,000. It was initially used as a supertanker to transport oil and had a capacity of over 4 million barrels. During the Iran-Iraq War in 1988, the Seawise Giant fell victim to a missile attack while anchored off the coast of Larak Island, Iran. The attack resulted in a massive fire that ultimately led to the ship sinking, causing it to list heavily and come to rest on the seabed. It was considered a total loss and was virtually abandoned. However, the story didn't end here. In the years following the war, the wreck of the Seawise Giant was the focus of ambitious salvage efforts. The ship's sheer size posed immense challenges, but determined engineers and divers worked tirelessly to refloat the vessel. And in 1991, after 3 years of meticulous work, the Seawise Giant was successfully raised from the depths. Following its salvage, the ship underwent extensive repairs and was renamed the Happy Giant. It returned to service as an oil tanker, albeit with a reduced capacity. The Seawise giant's remarkable resurrection showcased the capabilities of modern engineering and the determination of those involved. In 2009, the ship was renamed once again, this time as the Mont, and was eventually scrapped in 2010, marking the end of its long and eventful life. And at number 1, the Kursk. The Kursk, an Oscar II-class submarine of the Russian Navy, was conducting a naval exercise in the Barents Sea when a catastrophic explosion rocked the vessel. The explosion, in August of 2000, attributed to the detonation of a torpedo, resulted in the sinking of the Kursk, with all 118 crew members on board tragically losing their lives. The incident sent shockwaves not only through Russia but all across the world. The Kursk came to rest on the ocean floor some 90 miles off the Murmansk pilot station at a depth of 354 feet. The subsequent salvage operation of the Kursk was an international endeavor involving teams of specialists in heavy lifting, salvage, diving, and marine activities. The sub, with an approximate weight of 9,000 tons when prepared for the main lift, presented a formidable challenge. A 24,000-ton deadweight barge known as Giant 4 was deployed as the lifting and transport platform. An innovative approach was then devised to address the instability of the Kursk's damaged bow section. A specialized saw wire was employed to cut through the submarine's hull, separating the bow from the rest of the vessel. This intricate operation involved cutting 26 holes into the pressure hull, attaching lifting cables, raising the Kursk to a position beneath the Giant 4 barge, and transporting the barge-submarine combination to Murmansk. The Kursk was then safely delivered to the Murmansk dry dock on October 22, 2000, marking the successful conclusion of a monumental salvage operation and setting a new world record for lifting the heaviest object from such depths. Number 8. Colombian Navy finds ghost submarine. In early 2023, members of the Colombian Navy encountered a so-called ghost submarine in the Pacific Ocean off the country's west coast. Inside the 50-foot vessel, they found nearly 1,000 packages containing $88 million worth of cocaine, or around 2.6 tons, along with 2 dead bodies. 2 surviving crew members were found in poor health on the outside of the semi-submersible, while suffering the effects of inhaling toxins due to a fuel malfunction. Navy personnel brought the dozens of bricks of drugs, the dead crew members, and the survivors to the coastal city of Tumaco, where the survivors received life-saving medical treatment. Investigators determined that the vessel was one of 3 recently seized submarines that belonged to the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, also known as FARC. This Marxist revolutionary group spent more than a half-century trying to overthrow the Colombian government. Active from 1964 to 2017, FARC financed its activities through kidnapping, drug trafficking, and other crimes. One of its main focuses was on developing Narco semi-submersibles, which travel partially underwater in order to evade detection by authorities. Over time, these vessels have become increasingly sophisticated as the organization continues working to stay one step ahead of law enforcement. But at the end of the day, they are homemade, and this recent tragedy proves participating in the drug trade inevitably comes with deadly risks. Number 7. Manar Mahesha's homemade submarine fleet. When transporting drugs by plane and boat became too risky during the early 1990s, traffickers in Central and South America began working to develop a new system of transportation. Semi-submersible vessels that travel partially below the water surface, enabling them to evade radar detection and to remain mostly out of sight. These vehicles began as crude homemade contraptions, but they evolved over time and became increasingly easy and quick to build. They eventually became sophisticated enough to spark heavy concerns among authorities who were keen on combating the illegal drug trade. At one point, it was estimated that only 14% of Colombia's Narco submarines were intercepted by law enforcement. In July 2010, one such vessel was found stashed in a secret shipyard in the remote Ecuadorian jungle near the country's border with Colombia. Described by American authorities as fully operational, the 100-foot-long, partially built fiberglass submersible was capable of carrying tons of cocaine at a time. There was a camp nearby capable of housing as many as 50 workers. Investigators traced the operation to Monar Mahesha, who masterminded the construction of an entire fleet of drug-running submarines. Capable of diving up to 60 feet below the water surface for up to 18 hours at a time and going up to 10 days without refueling, Mahesha's Kevlar-coated vehicles were terrifyingly advanced. The U.S. Office of Naval Intelligence described the submarines as having been designed by someone with significant technical expertise. As it turned out, Mahesha had recruited Navy members to design and build his subs. Altogether, 3 of his vessels were seized, and the police raided several of his cocaine-producing labs, which contained tens of millions of dollars worth of the drug. Mahesha went on the run but surrendered to American authorities the following year. He pleaded guilty to conspiracy to manufacture and distribute cocaine and is serving an 18-year federal prison sentence in Miami. Number 6. Spain's first narco subs. Just days after a narco sub was found with 2 dead bodies inside the waters off Colombia in early 2023, a group of fishermen discovered a sunken homemade fiberglass vessel about a half-mile off the coast of Spain. They first noticed a small oil spill in the Arusa estuary, which prompted them to alert Spain's national law enforcement agency, La Guardia Civil. Divers were dispatched to the scene, where they located the custom-built semi-submersible lying on the seabed. The sub was refloated and towed to shore, but was found to be empty of both people and drugs. No arrests have been made in the case. 3.5 years earlier, in November 2019, a similar submersible was found scuttled in a Galician cove. Measuring about 70 feet long, the fiberglass vehicle had traveled 6,000 miles from Colombia, where an estimated 70% of the world's cocaine supply is produced. Dubbed Che, it was the first ever narco submarine to be seized in European waters. The vessel contained over 3.3 tons of cocaine. It had been abandoned by its pilot, a 31-year-old former Spanish boxing champion named Agustin Alvarez, and 2 other crew members, identified as Ecuadorian nationals Luis Tomas Benitez Manzaba and Pedro Roberto Delgado Manzaba. Police apprehended the dehydrated and famished trio as they emerged from the water. They admitted to investigators that they had sunk the sub after a series of storms along the coast had made it impossible for them to offload their illicit cargo. Alvarez and his 2 fellow crew members were sentenced to 11 years in prison for their crimes. 4 additional suspects who were found guilty of conspiring with the submarine crew received sentences ranging from 7 to 9 years behind bars. Do you think that's a fair sentence? Let us know in the comments and hit subscribe while you're at it. Number 5. Russian-designed narco sub. Back in 2000, a partially built Russian-designed narco sub was found in a clandestine workshop in the middle of Colombia, hundreds of miles from the coast. Measuring 120 feet long, it was much larger than most other narco subs of the time, and even compared to most of today's drug smuggling vessels. Some modern journalists and researchers have even described it as the most sophisticated and impressive narco submarine ever built. Authorities reportedly discovered the vehicle, known as the Facatativa narco sub, while investigating a suspected illegal gas clinger operation at the site. They found the nearly completed vessel just in time to stop it from transporting as much as 150 tons of cocaine out of Colombia. Most narco subs are actually semi-submersible low-profile vessels, or LPVs, which means that they only travel partially underwater. The Facatativa vessel was a full-fledged submarine resembling the design and build of some Russian Navy subs, suggesting that the cartel responsible for its production had recruited the expertise of foreign engineers. Perhaps the most alarming aspect of the Facatativa narco sub is the fact that it was larger than many others. Number 4. A new wave of narco subs. Drug traffickers have been using semi-submersibles to smuggle cocaine out of Colombia for over 30 years now. Over time, these vessels have gone from shoddy homemade DIY-style contraptions to professionally designed stealth vehicles that are giving international authorities a run for their money.
Modern narco subs can travel faster, farther, and far more discreetly than their predecessors, making it increasingly difficult for law enforcement to gain an upper hand in the so-called war on drugs. After the first narco sub was discovered off the coast of northwestern Spain in 2019, officials described the long-distance vessel as a game-changer in the European drug market. These submersibles are capable of carrying tens of millions of dollars worth of drugs, and the vast majority of them go undetected by law enforcement. According to an investigative article by Daily Mail reporter Tom Leonard, drug bosses recruit boat designers and engineers from various countries, including Russia, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan, to oversee their boat-building operations. The price of building each submersible can run into the millions, but the cost can easily pay itself back via the lucrative drug profits that kingpins can expect to see throughout the vessel's lifespan. In addition to the fact that the narco subs are becoming more advanced, the processes of building them have become somewhat standardized by the cartels that control their production. High-level drug traffickers have built factories deep in the South American jungle, where raw materials are ferried in by motorboat. And these fully staffed facilities can crank out new submarines in record time, ensuring that the global multi-billion-dollar cocaine trade remains steady even if a boat wrecks or is intercepted by authorities. Number 3. Giant semi-submersibles. At 120 feet long, the Facatativa narco sub that authorities found in the year 2000 was by far the largest vessel of its kind ever discovered. As I mentioned earlier in today's video, it was capable of fully submerging, unlike most narco subs. The largest semi-submersible or low-profile vessel narco sub ever discovered was found in the Colombian jungle in 2020. Measuring 100 feet long and roughly 10 feet wide, it was capable of carrying around 8 tons of cocaine. Its payload capacity was less than a tenth of the Facatativa narco sub, but it was the largest vessel of its kind to be found in many years, and it was big enough to cause alarm among international authorities who are dedicated to fighting the drug trade. The slender yet supersized fiberglass boat appeared to come from the same family as vessels as a Colombian-built narco sub that was found submerged off the Spanish coast in 2019 after traveling thousands of miles across the Atlantic Ocean. Its width was roughly a tenth of its length, which classified it as a very slender vessel or VSV. While the semi-submersible was admittedly less sophisticated than the Facatativa narco sub, it was arguably stealthier due to its design. Shortly after the discovery, Forbes contributor H.I. Sutton speculated that the unusually large vessel posed a potential new challenge to U.S. counter-narcotics operations. In Sutton's words, detecting these semi-submersibles is difficult because they're designed to get through. And the designs of narco subs are only improving with time, which essentially means that they're becoming harder to catch while traveling faster and carrying bigger payloads than ever before. Number 2. Largest ever Colombian narco sub. 2023 has been a busy year for the Colombian Navy, which has intercepted so many narco subs that it has become hard to keep track of the seizures. One raid that stood out among the others came in mid-May, when the largest Colombian narco sub ever recorded was captured in the Pacific Ocean while en route to Central America. According to CBS News, the 100-foot-long, 10-foot-wide vessel was intercepted along one of the most popular routes for smuggling drugs into the United States, which is reportedly the world's largest consumer of Colombian cocaine. Footage that was posted to the Armada de Colombia's Twitter page showed members of the Navy boarding the ultra-large narco sub and offloading packages of suspected drugs. Altogether, they seized an estimated $103 million worth of cocaine. 3 crew members aged 45, 54, and 63 were arrested in connection with the seizure. The men, who were all Colombian nationals, allegedly claimed that members of a drug cartel forced them to navigate the submarine into Central America. Under Colombian law, anyone found guilty of using, building, marketing, possessing, or transporting a narco sub can face a prison sentence of up to 14 years. The raid marked the 228th drug-laden narco sub seized by the Colombian Navy over a 30-year period. It was the largest vessel of its kind that was ever decommissioned by the country's authorities since record-keeping began in 1993. Several of the semi-submersibles that have been apprehended in recent years were bound for America, while others were captured in the Atlantic while en route to Europe. Unfortunately for authorities who are trying to put an end to the drug trade, cocaine production is reportedly on the rise. According to the United Nations, cultivations of the coca plant spanned 505,000 acres in 2021, marking the highest production rate since the agency started keeping track more than 2 decades earlier. Number 1. Combating modern-day drug traffickers. In July of 2019, personnel from the United States Coast Guard cutter Monroe raided a moving semi-submersible narco sub in the eastern Pacific Ocean off San Diego. Body cam footage of the harrowing seizure showed a Coast Guard boarding team pulling up on the sub while a crew member commanded the illicit vessel's operators to stop your boat now in Spanish.
¡Alto tu barco! ¡Ah!
2 camouflaged-clad crew members could be seen jumping on top of the narco sub as one of the men proceeded to bang on the sub's hatch with his fist. As soon as the hatch opened, the man inside immediately put his hands in the air and surrendered. Inside the narco sub, the crew found 8.5 tons of cocaine, amounting to a record $232 million haul. The bust came amid a spate of 14 similar raids that were conducted off Mexico and Central and South America over a 3-month period beginning in May of that year. Altogether, the seizures amounted to 19.5 tons of cocaine and 933 pounds of cannabis, totaling roughly $569 million worth of drugs. Speaking with the Washington Post, U.S. Coast Guard spokesman Stephen Bricky admitted that it's rare and a big deal for the agency to catch a drug smuggling boat, especially one carrying a cargo anywhere close to the size of the record seizure. He said that roughly 80% of the drugs that make their way into the United States enter via the Pacific Corridor, and that authorities intercept just 11% of these loads. The uptick in raids throughout 2019 came amid an increased effort among the U.S. and its allies to intercept drug shipments throughout known transit zones in the eastern Pacific Ocean and Caribbean basin. At the very least, these successes proved that authorities can catch more drug smugglers by collaborating with law enforcement in other countries and by stepping up their efforts, but these things are often easier said than done. After all, the world's oceans are big places, and even the most well-funded agencies lack the resources that it would take to truly obliterate the flow of drugs into their country, especially since drug traffickers go to great lengths to stay one step ahead of law enforcement. At the same time, the Coast Guard's successes throughout 2019 also show that even a handful of seizures can make a significant dent in the movement of illicit drugs, especially when narco subs carrying large payloads are intercepted.
Number 7. Ohio-class submarines. With a fully submerged displacement of 18,750 tons, the Ohio-class vessels are the largest submarines ever built for the United States Navy and the world's 3rd largest submarines. The class consists of 18 boats total, including 14 ballistic missile submarines or SSBNs and 4 cruise missile submarines or SSGNs. At one point in time, all 18 Ohio-class subs were ballistic missile submarines. During the mid-1990s, the decision was made to convert 14 of them into cruise missile submarines: the USS Ohio, USS Florida, USS Michigan, and USS Georgia. Each Ohio-class SSGN has a payload capacity of up to 154 Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles, which are stored in up to 22 missile tubes. The missile tubes also have room for storing food and other consumables, as well as certain equipment. Each SSGN can accommodate up to 66 crew members at a time. The 14 Ohio-class SSBNs are part of the U.S. military's nuclear deterrent triad. In layman's terms, a nuclear deterrent triad is a combination of land, sea, and air-based missiles that are meant to eliminate an enemy's ability to destroy the country's nuclear forces in a first strike attack. In other words, these submarines are armed to the hilt with explosives that are ready to launch on command should the need arise. And while the Ohio-class ships fall behind the Russian Typhoon and Boreai class when it comes to size, they're capable of carrying more missiles than both competing classes with a carrying capacity of 20 Trident II missiles each. Number 6. The Typhoon-class submarines. Measuring 575 feet long, the Soviet-designed Typhoon-class submarines are the largest submarines ever built. Also known under the designated Soviet name Project 941 Akula, 6 of these gargantuan nuclear-powered ballistic missile ships were produced for the Soviet Navy between the late 1970s and the late 1980s. Each vessel had enough room to accommodate a crew of 160 for months at a time. Russia's Typhoon-class submarines were developed as a response to America's Ohio-class vessels. The original goal was to match the armament of the Ohio-class subs with a significantly longer range. This is why the Typhoon-class vessels were much larger and heavier than their American counterparts. As the Cold War drew to a close in the early 90s, there were proposals to refit some Typhoon-class submarines into cargo vessels for shipping oil, gas, and cargo to Russia's remote far northern territories. With a carrying capacity of over 11,000 tons and the ability to travel beneath polar ice, it would have been a good use for the ships. The Russian Navy also made plans to modernize its Typhoon-class subs in a military fashion, but the program was cancelled in 2012. The last remaining Typhoon-class vessel, the Dmitry Donsky, functioned as a missile testing platform until its decommissioning in 2022. It is currently on reserve along with other members of its class, the Arkhangelsk and the Severstal, which have sat for years without any solid decisions on whether they'll be preserved or dismantled. Have you ever seen the inside of a submarine? Tell us in the comments and hit subscribe while you're at it. Number 5. Russia's nuclear deterrent force. Only 5 countries are confirmed to have a nuclear deterrent triad: the United States, Russia, China, India, and Pakistan. And Israel is the only country that's suspected of having a nuclear deterrent triad. The ballistic submarine component of Russia's triad is mostly made up of Boreai-class submarines, which were built starting in the mid-90s in a bid to replace the country's aging Delta III, Delta IV, and Typhoon-class fleet. Design work on the Boreai class started out in the 1980s, and construction on the first vessel began in 1996. The Boreai-class submarine entered service in 2013. At 557 feet long, the Boreai-class submarines are nearly as long as their record-holding Typhoon-class predecessors, but they're much smaller with half of the displacement tonnage of the Typhoon class and enough room to accommodate a crew of 107 personnel, 53 less than the Typhoon subs. The Boreai group represents some of the Russian Navy's most advanced technology and is enabling the military to patrol southern latitudes that have not seen a Russian missile submarine in 2 decades. Although the Cold War ended during the 90s, the continued development of nuclear submarine technology proves that the competition between the US and Russia for military superiority remains strong. The Boreai-class subs that serve on the nuclear deterrent force are joined by 4 newly developed Khabarovsk-class submarines. Each Khabarov sub is equipped with 6 nuclear-powered drone torpedoes that are capable of traveling across oceans and hitting coastal cities and military bases. These bombs are powerful enough to do 10 times more damage than the nuclear weapons that the US dropped on Japan during World War II. As tensions escalate between Putin's government and the growing number of countries who disagree with his increasingly aggressive actions over the last few years, Russia's nuclear deterrent force is ready to respond on a moment's notice to any perceived instigation by NATO forces. In early 2022, around the same time Russian forces invaded Ukraine, Putin put the country's nuclear deterrent force on high alert, signifying his intentions to escalate the conflict. Number 4. America's nuclear deterrent force. The United States first began developing its nuclear deterrent triad during the 1960s in preparation for nuclear blows with the Soviet Union. Of course, the world's leaders hoped it would never come to that, but they planned for it just in case. By forcing the USSR to prepare for a potential nuclear strike from the land, air, and sea, the US gained an upper hand, for the time being at least. During the 1960s, the number of US-commissioned deployment-ready delivery vehicles that were capable of carrying nuclear warheads peaked in 1967 at 2,268. From the 1970s until the introduction of the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, or START, in 1991, the number of vehicles hovered between 1,875 and 2,200.
The START limited America's maximum number of delivery vehicles to 1,600 and its total number of warheads to 6,000, and the country continuously reduced both over the following decades. As of 2009, the U.S. had reduced its count to 2,200 warheads and 850 delivery vehicles. In 2010, a new START treaty went into effect. Since then, the U.S. has further scaled back on its nuclear arsenal while focusing on modernizing the systems it plans to keep. Despite these reduced numbers, the Obama administration made it clear that the country will maintain a nuclear deterrent triad for the foreseeable future. By doing so, America ensures its ability to carry out a nuclear strike even if one or two of the triad's legs are rendered inoperable. Efforts to downsize are nevertheless ongoing, with the most recent comprehensive plan being released in 2018. The program's release came on the heels of the Trump administration's nuclear posture review, which stated in clear terms that the U.S. supports the elimination of nuclear weapons worldwide. For now, the country's leaders are making baby steps towards that ultimate goal while awaiting the day when nuclear weapons are deemed no longer necessary. Number 3. Russia's nuclear submarine disposal problem. Some of the most threatening nuclear-powered submarines are dangerous not because of their armament, but because they've been taken out of service and left to rot in the world's oceans and seas. This is particularly a big problem in the waters off Russia, and it's this direct product of the historically infamous Cold War arms race between the US and the Soviet Union. It's unclear whether either country was thinking about how it would one day dispose of outdated nuclear weapons and vehicles. But in the post-Cold War era, both superpowers have realized just how complicated, time-consuming, and expensive this task truly is, especially when it comes to retired nuclear submarines and ships. Even in the United States, with a detailed program and funding securely in place, getting rid of these old vessels is a truly monumental task. The situation is much worse in Russia, which appears to lack both a comprehensive plan and the money to properly dispose of its aging nuclear-powered naval ships. It's also unlikely that the country has enough money to properly maintain these vessels to prevent nuclear leakage as they languish in the water with an uncertain future. Of the 244 nuclear subs the Soviet Union produced during the Cold War, 180 of them have been taken out of service, mostly because the government did not have enough money to keep them operational following the collapse of the Iron Curtain. Under Russia's current system, only 3 to 6 vessels can be dismantled per year, resulting in a horrendous backlog that only seems to be worsening as the current fleets continue to age. In the past, the Soviet Union dumped reactor coolant and other low-level liquid radioactive wastes directly into the sea. The practice was forbidden in 1972 by the London Dumping Convention, and modern Russian leaders have promised to comply with the terms of the agreement, which also banned the scuttling of nuclear vessels. But whether or not Russia can realistically live up to these promises without help from other countries is highly questionable and remains to be seen. Based on the sheer number of nuclear-powered submarines that were produced, Soviet leaders clearly did not plan for the Cold War to end peacefully or for the USSR to go broke like it did. It would explain why they had no effective plan in place for safely dismantling and scrapping these vessels. Roughly 110 of Russia's decommissioned submarines still have operating nuclear reactors. Because the country has nowhere to store liquid waste or spent fuel, many of these vessels are currently manned by skeleton crews. At one point in time, a country's failure to properly dispose of its military hardware may have been largely considered that country's problem. But it's a different story when it comes to nuclear materials and the dangers they pose. Russia's problem is a concern to the international community at large, and the solution will most likely require outside countries to provide Russia with an influx of financial assistance, something that the US is arguably in one of the best positions to give, but one of the last things American leaders are keen to do, especially amid the ongoing war in Ukraine. Number 2. The USS Enterprise. The former USS Enterprise, also known as CVN-65, became the US Navy's first nuclear-powered aircraft carrier in 1958. At 1,123 feet long, she's also the longest naval vessel ever built. Building the Enterprise came at the immense cost of $451.3 million, roughly the equivalent of $4.35 billion in 2021. Dismantling and disposing of the ship will also be extremely expensive and time-consuming. The vessel was deactivated in 2012, and in 2017, she became the first decommissioned nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. The defueling process began in 2013 in Newport News, Virginia. Since then, more than 35,000 pounds of steel has been removed from the previous Enterprise and repurposed for the future Enterprise aircraft carrier, also known as CVN-80. CVN-65's final nuclear reactor was defueled in 2016, but the ship has yet to be fully dismantled. For now, the recycling process is on hold while the Navy seeks a more technically executable, environmentally responsible disposal method for the retired aircraft carrier. In 2022, the military announced its tentative plans to contract with a commercial dismantlement facility due to the heavy workload at Puget Sound, where numerous decommissioned nuclear vessels are already awaiting dismantlement. According to a draft report, the quickest route will still take at least 5 years and will cost an estimated $554 to $696 million. The two alternatives listed in the report would also each take at least 15 years and come to a cost of $1.1 to $1.35 billion. The Navy also reportedly considering a no-action alternative, which means that the Enterprise would be put into long-term storage while officials try to come up with a better plan for it. And at number 1, the NS Savannah. During the late 1950s, then-President Dwight D. Eisenhower embarked on a campaign to promote the use of nuclear technology for peaceful purposes known as the Atoms for Peace Initiative. As part of his vision, he ordered the construction of the world's first ever nuclear-powered merchant ship, the NS Savannah. Built in New Jersey, the nearly 600-foot-long government-funded vessel was one of just 4 nuclear-powered cargo ships ever built. She was also designed to function as a passenger ship with 30 staterooms, multiple lounges, a bar, a 75-seat dining room, a dance floor, a swimming pool, and a promenade deck. The Savannah operated for just a decade, from 1962 to 1972. Passenger service lasted for just 3 years before it was discontinued in 1965. Only 848 civilians ever traveled aboard the ship, which would perhaps explain why its interior remains pristine even to this day. With atomic and chemistry-themed sculptures, light fixtures, wall hangings, and even diningware, as well as the geometric, brightly colored furniture and illuminated glass tabletops, stepping onto the Savannah is like stepping back in time to the bygone era of excitement over the advent of atomic energy. After being taken out of service and moving several times, the vessel was moored at the Canton Marine Terminal in Baltimore, Maryland, where she remains to this day with an uncertain future. Like any nuclear-powered vessel, the process of fully decommissioning the Savannah is more complicated than it would be for any other type of ship. At the same time, allowing the Savannah to languish in a deteriorating state is also not an option due to the environmental and health hazards that it poses. Within a year of being taken out of service, the Savannah was defueled, but she's been hanging in limbo for more than a half-century now. The ship is occasionally open for tours, and then there's been talk of turning her into a museum ship, but a lack of funding has prevented these plans from moving forward. In recent years, the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission proposed a multi-step program that would take 7 years from start to finish. As of late 2023, the program appears to be in its second phase, which involves the actual dismantling of the ship. The Savannah's low-pressure reactor has been removed and taken to a radioactive waste facility, and the project is ongoing. Thanks for watching. Which one of these submarines impressed you the most? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you soon. Bye for now.